Oh, and good evening. It's March 18th, 2025, and we're continuing our discussion collection in our Outside the Class series. This series is from the Bible Project. It covers the entire TaNaK, right? That Old Testament. In TheDustyFeet.com, in the Outside the Class section, those source videos are set up for your review. Because the intent of Outside the Class is you to listen to that in-class lecture first. The source video playlist, it contains all of those lectures, because these we try to keep to about 15 minutes. I want to make them easy to catch up on. So we're on a quest, scroll by scroll, book by book, a journey through this collection, but with a fun and different twist on Outside the Class, on the Dusty Feet. And before we forget, if you do find these kinds of podcasts useful, please click that subscribe button. But the reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, that is when you click that like button, because that is how YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. So we need to remember that the videos we're going to be discussing, they're just the beginning of a highly recommended learning series, and that entire series is available on the Bible Project's website. Because we're going to ask lots of questions about all kinds of things. Answers? That's what we're going to see. Judges, Shoftim, part 9. Yeah. So, what can happen when we say something and what we say then gets us into trouble? Ended up being something we wished we'd never let see the light of day, but it did. And we're left with carnage. This man, this judge, chosen by God for a purpose, he speaks his mind. Hence, we get the section header, Jephthah's tragic vow. Can we get ourselves in trouble, even in the best of circumstances? Can we get caught up in a moment and cross a line? Judges chapter 11 starts at 29. Now, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, so that he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and he passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he went on to the sons of Ammon. Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, and he said, "If you indeed give me the sons of Ammon into my hand, then it shall be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the sons of Ammon, it shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering." Maybe we can get lucky, and what we promised doesn't really happen, right? It didn't actually play out the way the vow went. Yeah. And I don't know why when I hear this story, I'm reminded of the foxhole prayer that if this, then that. Just what pops up in my little wee head. But here's our problem. What if what we say does work out? But maybe just not in the way we expected, at least our intent. Then it can be a messy thing. So the story continues. So Jephthah crossed over to the sons of Ammon for the fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. And he struck them with a very great slaughter from Aroer to the entrance of Minnith, 20 cities, and as far as Abel Keramim. So the sons of Ammon were subdued before the sons of Israel. When Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, behold, his daughter was coming out to meet him with tambourines and with dancing. Now she was his one and only child, and besides her, he had no son or daughter. Okay, so first, let's cover his initial response. Then we can address the elephant in the room. So when he saw her, he tore his clothes and he said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you're among those who trouble me. Yeah, for I have given my word to the Lord, and I can't take it back." So one, is the detail of the only child really important here? I mean, here we have it. Because if he had more children, would it not have been as traumatic? I mean, and cause us to pause and think about it. Let's move on. And then two, would God ever really hold us to a vow, however well-intentioned, that would go against the very fabric of who he is in your vow, right? The sacrifice of a loved one. It would cause the death of your own. Remember, this is our vow. We just didn't think it entirely through. We talk about customs. We talk about traditions. We have phrases like, this is why we do what we do. And we even get this thing in this particular story for us to consider. And she said to him, my father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you've said, since the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the sons of Ammon. And she said to her father, let me this thing be done for me. Let me alone 2 months, that I may go to the mountains, weep because of my virginity, I and my companions. And he said, go. So he sent her away for 2 months. She left with her companions, wept on the mountains because of her virginity. And at the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did to her according to the vow which he'd made, and she had no relations with a man. Thus it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite, 4 days in the year. There's a lot to talk amongst yourselves about. I mean, this is a mess. But he sends her away for a period of time, 2 months. Cry because she's a virgin. She'll never marry. And she's going to die. To be fair, to be honest, she is the brave one in this because she chooses to return. That's a whole nother level of discussion. Please discuss that amongst yourselves. But she returns to help her father keep his vow. I'm really glad that the story leaves the execution of the vow to our imagination, because it merely mentions that because of this act, it'll become a custom in Israel, looks for the good part, a tradition, to honor the daughter of Jephthah, this Gileadite. So the next in the story, we have infighting, right? I mean, I've seen stupid reasons to fight. I've been part of stupid reasons to fight. Still, this fascinating interaction between leaders of people groups that leads to an interaction between these people groups and the following bloodshed that shows what we are as humans, what we're capable of, even if we're followers of God. Because for lack of a better term, stupid stuff. Beginning of 12, then the men of Ephraim were summoned, and they crossed to Zaphon, and they said to Jephthah, why did you cross over to fight against the son of Ammon without calling us to go with you? We will burn your house down on you. Jephthah, he said to them, I and my people were at great strife with the sons of Ammon. When I called you, you did not deliver me from their hand. When I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my hands, and I crossed over against the sons of Ammon, and the Lord gave them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me? Then Jephthah, he gathered all the men of Gilead, and he fought Ephraim, and the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim, because they said, you are the fugitives of Ephraim, O Gileadites, in the midst of Ephraim and in the midst of Manasseh. And the Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan opposite Ephraim. And it happened when any of the fugitives of Ephraim said, let me cross over. And the men of Gilead would say to him, are you an Ephraimite? And if he said no, then they would say to him, say Shibboleth. but he said Sibboleth, for he could not pronounce it correctly. Then they seized him and slew him at the fords of the Jordan. Thus there fell at that time 42,000 from Ephraim. 42,000. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadite died, and he was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. Messy life, Jephthah, yeah? Again, yes, he's chosen by God. And again, still, even within the scope of being chosen, he made choices that were at least deserve discussion amongst ourselves, right? Whether even the choices that were being chosen by God, right? Because he thought he was on his side, were they good? Just because God chooses you, it doesn't mean that everything that follows would meet God's, I guess for lack of a better term, wants. Seems by the stories that we're reading and these judges, well, that's maybe anything but. Sometimes I think we need to understand that when we hear about these stories and we have this talk about God being more, I guess for lack of a better term, aggressive in this part of the story, and there's bloodshed. But as we're seeing, sometimes that bloodshed might not always be at the backing of God. But we need to remember that this is part of that discussion you've had amongst yourselves, right? That everything we read is a result of them not hearing God's word, which means God's well-spoken word at the end of Exodus, the scroll of Joshua, the beginning of the scroll of Judges, was not heeded, right? We must remember that in the story, that because of that, that's why we're now here. These are these stories, with us, humans involved, in all of our messy glory. At the end of chapter 12, we get 3 quick judges, right? With a little more messiness and shorter time frames as judges, say, than Tola or Jair. Now Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel after him, and he had 30 sons and 30 daughters, whom he gave in marriage outside the family. And he brought in 30 daughters from outside for his sons, and he judged Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried in Bethlehem. Now Elon, the Zebulunite, judged Israel after him, and he judged Israel 10 years. Then Elon, the Zebulunite, died, and he was buried at Ajalon in the land of Zebulun. Now Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, judged Israel after him. He had 40 sons, 30 grandsons, who rode on 70 donkeys. He judged Israel 8 years. Then Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, died and was buried in Pirathon in the land of Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. It's interesting. Some people discuss numbers as important in God's way, which is often referenced in Scripture. There are many numbers tossed around here that are, I'll say, they're actual literal numbers, but at the same time, maybe they mean something more. Maybe they don't. Again, that's for more discussion amongst yourselves. Of course, I just like that one of the things we often see in these story in the Judges are donkeys. Yeah, that's probably for another discussion, so we think we better just stock up on our coffee and donuts. But next week, we're going to step into a rather famous judge, probably, arguably, the most famous judge. We're going to start the discussion of Samson. That will open up quite a bit to consider, because I know you already have pictures in your head, and we can see if they align with the story. So thanks for being with us tonight on another Outside the Class with the Scroll of Judges on the Dusty Feet.